All right, so wrap this up a little bit here. What I want to do is look at a couple of shots. There's 11 different shots in the sequence that I'm looking at. So in this scene, and I don't want to take the time to do all of them. That would be time consuming and boring for you. So I want to take about time to look at about 4 or 5 of the shots, and then I want to recap the kind of method or the process that I've illustrated for you. Alrighty, here we go.
I wouldn't be asking you. It's just I need somebody I could trust.
Alright, so a couple things to point out in this shot that I would need to bring up in the analysis. First of all, talking about framing and shot type, this is a close-up of the agent. Interesting framing. It starts out kind of center framing, but the camera has a little bit of a screen right drift. So there's a kind of decentering action going on within the frame. So it kind of gets a heavier kind of a screen left balance framing, which is a little more, along the lines of the rule of thirds. What I'm noticing color and lighting wise is dark suit, very dark background, and a very kind of low subdued lighting on Forest Whitaker's character. And for much of this shot, actually, right, the right side of his face his right side is very much in shadow. This is a convention from filmmakers. This tells you, okay, this character is not entirely trustworthy. And we're going to see this in just the next shot. We're going to see how this works out differently. Alright, so then we cut to a shot of the driver. Now this is what's called a reaction shot. Right, so this shows us back and forth in the conversation. It's important to note, however, that in actual filming, these two shots may not have been shot at the same time. Depending on scheduling and all kinds of factors, they may have shot the Forest Whitaker character, the agent, may have been shot, and then the Clive Owen character, the driver, his sequences here may have been shot a day or two or even a week or two later. But just within editing, you can put those together so we have the illusion of this conversation happening in real time. A couple of things that are going on here, right? This is another close-up. We get a little bit more headroom, of course. And there's also an extreme kind of right frame orientation, more in line with the rule of thirds. One thing to note, though, right, you see here it's dark all around the face and hand of the driver. This is a technique called vignetting. And what happens with vignetting is, right, we need to focus on something about the character. The filmmaker is telling us there's something important going on here with this character. My interpretation of the film is that this character, he's in the light. The agent is not in the light as much, but the driver is in the light. So he is the one, the character of trust. We're being signaled here that his perspective is the one in the light, the correct one or the right one that we should follow.
He's on location all weekend, This thing is driving him crazy.
All right, so we cut back to the agent. Now, one of the things that we're kind of can see here is the framing is subtly different. We can't see his right shoulder in the way that we could in the earlier frame. We also see much more of the background behind him. So the camera has moved subtly. And in fictional films, oftentimes directors will do this to communicate a sense of mysteriousness, a sense that the character is hiding something. Communicates this sense of not everything is okay here. A couple things to notice as well. It's really hard to tell what this character is looking at because he's looking to screen left. So he's looking off screen, but it kind of doesn't match the shot of the driver the way we would expect. Um, he also want to point out here, right over his right shoulder, excuse me, over his left shoulder, we see those greens, those yellowish greens, and the yellowish greens are the ones, the kind of sickly greens. This kind of reinforces, right, that moment where he talks about this thing is eating at his brain. Eating at his brain, this is a language of mental illness. And then we also have the color green, the sickly color green. So this is reinforcing that there is something not quite right going on in this situation.
He's got to know where she goes, what she sees.
There are people who do this.
All right, and we have another reaction shot of the driver to the agent. Couple things to point out again here, right? We see he's still vignetted. We can see a little bit more of the background here behind him, right? So we're getting a little bit more context with him. But the shot is still so similar to the other one. But I'm wondering if that was kind of the earlier shot was darkened slightly behind him on purpose to vignette him even a little bit more. A couple things that are going on here that I think is really interesting. He takes that drink of water. Water is a symbol. Water is a symbol of cleanliness and purity, right? Again, so we're getting this signal that this guy is the person we should trust. I think it's also very interesting. He doesn't really make eye contact with the agent, right? He's looking at the drink first, and then he's looking off to his left, right? So he's looking off screen, right? So they're not really looking at each other. They're not, right? They're not seeing things in the same way. Additionally, excuse me, you've also got him talking about the agent talking about the actor wanting to know who the wife is seeing and things like that. So we're starting to see this kind of paranoia, right? So we've got the sickly green, we've got this thing eating in his brain, and now we're getting this sense of paranoia, right? All of these little clues are starting to tell us there's not something, all is not right in the state of Denmark, to quote Shakespeare in Hamlet. Okay, so there are 4 shots there, and you kind of see how, moving from shot to shot, you have to slow the shot down, think about it specifically, and think about the ways we've talked about in analyzing images. Sound is coming into it. I'm not going to pay too much attention to sound analysis. I'll be delighted if you put some in. And that'll probably make your paper a little bit stronger, so give it a shot. Alrighty, so let's recap on the steps. Okay, so step 1, watch the film 2 or 3 times to determine what the overall impression is. Overall impression may not be the best way to say it. Maybe another way to say it is, what conclusion do you want to guide your readers to about the film? So for example, with The Follow, I want to guide my readers to the idea that the agent and the actor are unreliable, that there's something going on, and that if we don't trust them, the film is telling us not to trust them. So it's up to us then to discover what the driver discovers, namely that the wife is in an abusive relationship. All right, so step 2 is figure out what the scope of the analysis will be. Are you going to write about this kind of idea that stretches throughout the film? Are you going to write about a specific part of the film? Right, so in this analysis, the example I've given, the scope of the analysis is just that first encounter, that first scene between the driver and the agent. Step 3 is figuring out what ideas or techniques you will analyze. Right, so what aspects of image or sound or whatever. Right, so in my example, I'm going to look at framing and shot type, color and lighting. I'm also bringing in dialogue, but I haven't concentrated on that in this example. But in a final analysis, that will be there. And I will also look at gender and race. And in your analysis, I want you to consider either gender or race. If you can bring in both, that would be cool, but one will be enough for you for this assignment. Step 4 is rewatch the scene or the section that you're going to analyze. Look at it in terms of the specific ideas or techniques that you're going to use in your analysis, and importantly, take notes. Film critics, film scholars always take notes. They don't expect themselves to think about and see everything all at once. They're professionals. If they're not expecting themselves to do that, don't expect it of yourself. Take notes. Again, you're not having to write about a whole film, a whole feature-length film. You're writing about a short film, and even pieces of that short film. Take notes. Do yourself a favor. It'll make your job much easier when you go to write the paper. And step 5, we need to draw that connection between the impression or the guiding idea that we want our readers to come away with and the specifics of the analysis. It is our responsibility as a writer to make those connections. It's not fair for us to throw things out there and expect the reader to make those connections. That constitutes an ineffective communication situation.